Hello there and welcome to Black Jackal Gaming. Do Firstborn still have a place in modern day 40k, and are they on the squatting block? So the Firstborn models are pretty out of proportion and look a bit odd on the tabletop at times, and some of the posing isn't very dynamic, it's quite stiff and rigid. But saying this, a lot of the units are really iconic and the Primaris Rangers really struggled to replicate this. Some of the characters still look really great and they're full of detail and really stand out on the tabletop. Will the release of the true scale Terminators and characters help reinvigorate the range? Or has the direction that GW has gone in by creating Primaris Scouts and Sterngard and forcing them to cross the Rubicon, is that going to prevent Firstborn kits to carry on functioning? Since the launch of the Primaris range in 8th edition, there has been a very slow and steady march towards the end of Firstborn, with a lot of Firstborn units becoming legendary units and removed from the game. The first wave of Primaris was a significant amount of models and units, and it really outlined the intention of GW to replace a lot of the range. There was a lot of different units and types and characters that come out to allow you to have a functioning army. There was a substantial amount of characters that come out at launch, which was really nice because it gave you a lot of variation. You had captains, librarians, lieutenants, chaplains, apothecaries, and ancient, as well as full boss options for some of these units. For troops, we were given intercessors to replace their tactical squad, and we essentially got new scouts in the form of infiltrators and incursors. To go along with these troop choices, we got some elite choices, such as Aggressors with the Flamestorm and Boltstorm gauntlets, Hellblasters with the Plasma, Inceptors with the jump packs and Plasma, which was very nice, and Reavers, which were bringing a little bit of morale-based rules, which didn't really come into play and are still struggling to this day. No army would be complete without vehicle choices, so we got the Redempted Dreadnought to replace the Box Dreadnought. The Invictor Tactical Warsuit is essentially a mini Dreadnought that can forward deploy. We got a Repulsor in place of a Land Raider with extra small arm firepower, and the Impulsor, which was there to replace the Rhino as the troop transport. From within the first couple of months of 8th edition London, you could easily field an entire army of Primaris units with the different variations and varieties were released, and you could still have a very competitive army. Some of these options, such as the Repulsor, were actually very good upon release. Then when 9th edition landed, it came with the Indomitus box set, and as well as some later releases, the range was pretty much close to being complete in what GW would hope to achieve with the range, with the majority of the units being there essentially to replace some of the Firstborn, not quite directly, but they were the same type and style of unit. With the release of Indomitus and the further releases in Knights, we got a couple of more captains, a lieutenant, well, many lieutenants we should say really, but most of them were in the same guise. It was just a slightly different loadout, but we did get one with a relic shield and a power sword, and we also got the Tech Marine. For the troop choices, we got 2 additional choices to go along with it, the Assault Intercessors and the Heavy Intercessors. For the elite choices, we got Blade Guard Veterans, and with them come a Blade Guard Ancient, and we got Eradicators, which upon release was so good they ate multiple nerfs to try and bring them in line with other units in the game. For the fast attack options, we were given Outriders to replace bikes, and the Invader ATV to replace the attack bike. For the vehicles, we got a couple of different options there just to buff out the range. We got the Gladiator variants, which comes with the 3 different types of Gladiators. The Storm Speeder variants, again another 3 different types of Storm Speeders to replace the Speeders from the Firstborn range. And then we got a couple of essentially fortifications that carried the vehicle keyword, being the Firestrike Servo Turret, which is a bit of a strange unit as it cannot really move that all much, but it does come with las cannons or autocannons. It's a little bit strange, shall we say. And the Hammerfall Bunker, which goes between having great rules that are instantly nerfed because they're too good to being absolutely useless. We also saw the release of a Black Templar specific characters such as Helbrecht, as well as a couple of units to go along with it so they stand out a little bit differently and replace some of their Firstborn range. With all different types of units and non-named characters, we have to have some named characters as well, so there was a lot of crossing of the Rubicon. So with the launch of 8th edition, GW made the decision to go across all of the sub-factions, all of the chapters, and recreate some of the characters in the Primaris form, so forcing the ones that we know and love to cross the Rubicon. Even though the survival rate for crossing the Rubicon was meant to be terrible, and it was a great risk, all the named characters managed to survive the crossing with no incident. Now onto the arrival of 10th edition, and we have a range refresh coming for the Dark Angels, and there's going to be a substantial amount of the characters becoming Primaris characters. So we'll go across the chapters that have had the characters cross the Rubicon so far. First up we have the Ultramarines, which have a couple. We've got Marnius Calgar, we've got Tigeris, who's the Chief Librarian, and Uriel Fentress as well. For Dark Angels, we've got the Four, we've got the Grandmaster Azrael, we got Asmodai, Lazarus, and potentially Belial. We haven't actually been told whether he's crossed the Rubicon yet because he's now in true scale Terminator armor, but the rumors are that he is likely crossed. Then we have Blood Angels, who first of all they have Mephiston and Ptolemaron cross, and very recently we have Dante finally crossed the Rubicon as well. For White Scars we have one of the Khans in Corsaro Khan, and for Raven Guard we have Kayvan Shrike. Iron Hands have had Iron Father Feros, and Imperial Fists have had Tor Garadon, and he is in Gravis armor, which is quite nice. Salamanders have Adrax Agaton, and Space Wolves have the Chapter Master in Waiting, Ragnar Blackmane. Firstborn units, a lot of them bring a certain iconic look that has stood the test of time. Apart from a couple of proportional issues, a lot of the units do stand out for exactly what they are. Space Marine units looking tough as nails, and some of the Primaris units have failed to replicate this. They're being accused of lacking a bit of soul, and sometimes their purpose not really being relevant to the tabletop. Some of the non-name characters can be rather generic looking. The route that GW went down with the design ethos was to clean them up and probably make them a little bit more PG and safer looking, but at the same time just looking not all that interesting. Whilst the poses might have been a little bit more dynamic and there was a lot of details in the models, nothing really stood out for them. A good example of this is the new Chaplain and Terminator armor. The old one looks absolutely fantastic. It's coated in additional details, whether it be oaths of moment, pendants, just relics of a chapter. It looks exactly how you would imagine it to look. Whilst the new one, when you've got it actually in hand and you're painting it, it looks great, especially with the relic shield and the maul. But when you're seeing it on the website, for example, it doesn't exactly stand out as a riveting model to paint and all that interesting, really. The majority of the community was quite happy to see the new true scale Terminator squad and the characters going with them. It really embodies what the community wanted, the direction they wanted to go in, and that they more wanted Firstborn units to be true scale rather than just reimagined. With this in mind, GW's definitely leaned a little bit more into nostalgia of late, and they brought out new Sterngard and Scout units, but they're definitely more in the guise of a Primaris unit rather than new kits for the Firstborn. Within game they are including keywords that link them more to Primaris. Whilst they still look absolutely fantastic and they could be considered true scale, they are a bit of a link between both worlds. So ultimately, do Firstborn still serve a purpose? There's plenty of players that still have Firstborn kits, so they'd be quite unhappy to see them squatted. There's a lot of hobbyists that don't play the game, that just collect the kits and are more into the iconic looking units than the more clean Primaris units. However, there is an issue with too many datasheets still within the Space Marine Codex, and they are moving in line with removing some of the redundant kits and making them legendary choices. When the old kits are on the tabletop next to the Primaris kits, there is definitely a proportion problem where when you look at them, they do look completely out of scale. A lot of players would be happy if instead of just bringing out reimagined Primaris units based on the Firstborn ones, if they just brought out true scale versions in the guise of the Terminators and the Sternguards and the like, rather than just the similarish looking Primaris kits that kind of serve the same purpose but are just a little bit more on the generic side and lacking character. At the end of 9th edition and start of 10th, they really took a right step in the direction with Terminator, Sterngard and Scouts, and this is what most people are happy about because it's still keeping in line with what people love about Space Marines, and kicking in the nostalgia, whilst actually having fully proportioned models on the tabletop that look nice and slick. I think even keeping this in mind, the Rhino chassis are definitely in danger and they will be on the chopping block. They've essentially been replaced already, but for loyalist Space Marines, they are definitely going to be legend at some point in the near future. For Chaos Space Marines and potentially even the likes of Grey Knights, they remain in the range for a little bit longer. Getting rid of the Rhino chassis will leave a little bit of a gap within the vehicle range, and another Gladiator kit that comes with an option of a Whirlwind or Vindicator option, that siege cannon, would be really good. It would be a great addition to the range and add a little bit more variety to the vehicles if they did get rid of the Rhino chassis. Now, I am a massive lover of the Vindicator. I think it looks great, and I've always been a fan of its rules, of its Demolisher style cannon, and having the additional armor and essentially scoop on the front to do additional damage. It just looks really cool, and I've always been a fan. However, I've got it in the back of my mind that it will be squatted at some point, and it does stop me from purchasing the model. I think if we're being realistic how GW operates as a business, and the fact that they do have a limited amount of space to stock items, and the factories within Nottingham, they're already at full capacity in producing product, and they have maxed out the energy grid there, so they would have to go elsewhere to produce more product, that we will probably see the majority of the Firstborn range become legends for 11th edition. At the very least, some of them will have new Primaris style kits that will be a replica of the current kit, but I can't see us having too many Firstborn options going into 11th edition, unfortunately. Check out these other videos, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time.